Hi, everyone. Welcome to Build Series in New York City. I'm your host, Lauren Moraski, with an exciting guest to introduce to the stage. You know him as a mentor on Project Runway and for his signature phrase, make it work. Before that, he spent years at the Parsons New School of Design, where he also served as chair of the fashion design department. He recently teamed with a Command brand to help people decorate and express themselves at home. Here to talk about all of that is Tim Gunn.
Lauren, thank you so much.
Tim, we're so excited to welcome you back to the Build stage.
Well, I'm excited to be back.
Yes,
thank you so much.
Yes. Okay, so it's spring, finally. It's sort of starting to feel like spring
thank
almost,
goodness.
right?
Yes.
Ah, man, I just don't know how to dress these days, that in-between sort of phase, right?
I don't think any of us know how to dress these days.
Yeah, it's confusing, but it's also exciting because, you know, it's a spring cleaning.
Yes.
Things clean out our homes, and we kind of like want that fresh take at home. What are some tips to sort of freshen up our homes during this time of the year?
Well, I like to begin with the closet.
Okay.
And do a closet inventory.
Oh my
and
gosh, that's
take
hard.
note of what are you wearing, what are you not wearing, what still has the tags on it, and ask yourself, what do you need, what should you give away, and what should you throw away?
Yeah, what should you throw away? I feel like I keep things for so long.
Well, things that you're not going to wear in public, unless in fact you're painting the house. Things that are just not you anymore.
Okay.
And I believe in the semiotics of clothes, that the clothes we wear send a message about how the world perceives us, and how we want that perception to be evolves too. I mean, it certainly has evolved for me, and I believe it evolves for our home decor as well. And I really am a lifestyle guy. I think that was formed when I was at Parsons for those 24 years because it's the lifestyle design school. So for me, fashion, interiors, they're all connected.
Sure. Does one influence the other, and how so?
Well, I believe that the way that we dress, at least in my case, has a very big impact on my interiors, and as I said, it's evolved. I'm all about pattern mixing and layering, and I would say that my home is that way too. And it's actually what compelled me to run, not walk, to get involved with the Command products of 3M, because they just give you so much freedom of latitude and flexibility with your interiors, because you're not making a commitment and putting that picture there on that wall. You may make a commitment. I do. I've had Command strips that have been holding things up for years, but they're all interrelated.
You know, a lot of us live in small apartments in New York City, right? Okay,
Yes.
Raise your hand if you live in a small apartment. And yes, a lot of hands raised. What can we do to, you know, with small spaces? What are some tricks that we can do in those small spaces?
Well, one has to be very mindful of scale. And that doesn't mean everything needs to be small. It just means that the relationship among the things that exist within your living environment need to be in harmony. Large items juxtaposed to smaller things. I mean, think of everything small scale, it begins to feel like a dollhouse.
Yeah.
And the same holds true for what we put on our walls. And I go into so many friends' apartments where things are just languishing up against a wall. Why don't you hang that up? I don't know what to do. I don't know where to put it.
Right.
Well, the way in which we decorate our home should be the same way that we dress. It should be all about silhouette, proportion, and fit. So look at the relationship of the furniture to the size and scale of whether it's a photograph or a painting or a drawing, whatever it may be. It could be a poster.
Sure.
And play with it accordingly. You need to be cognizant of ceiling heights. Also, people hang things entirely too high in many cases. Look at those proportional relationships. It's not that hard. It's really about intuition and feeling a space.
Got it. I like that tip. How would you describe your decor at home?
I hate the word eclectic because it sounds as though it incorporates everything, and I'm really not about that. I'm a classicist. I won't say a traditionalist, I'm a classicist. And I like things that have a story, that have some history. So I have a lot of old things. I won't call them antiques, I'll call them old.
Old. I love that. Well, I know that before, obviously there was a point in your life that you decided to do fashion, but I read somewhere that you could have been in interior design.
Absolutely.
Right?
I mean, it really is where my heart and soul is. And I want to add too, I didn't choose fashion, it chose me.
How did it choose you? At what point?
I was teaching at Parsons, and I was also an administrator. I was associate dean. And in my role role as associate dean, I was a kind of, what's the word to use? Mr. Fix-It. Though I called myself a pooper scooper. So I was constantly going into arenas where things were suffering in some way. And in the case of our fashion department, it was in a crisis of leadership. And I was sent in to work with the faculty and the students to determine what kind of new leadership was needed. And in that process, realized that the place was suffering from inertia. That curriculum had not changed in 50 years.
That's insane.
I know. If you think about this industry, it's constantly in flux. It's constantly changing. So I wrote a State of the Union to the dean and in a way, backed myself into a situation where I was appointed interim chair for a year. And I had been in the department for about 3 months, and I said to the dean, this place is hemorrhaging. This is not a quick fix, excuse me.
Yeah.
And I had to go through a kind of fashion evolution myself. I was meeting with a dear pal whom I had known for a long time before becoming chair of the fashion department, Diane von Furstenberg. And when we met in my new chairman's office, she was looking at me with the most peculiar look on her face. I'm reminded of a line from I Love Lucy when Lucy describes Charles Boyer as his manner as it's as though he walked into the grand ballroom and smelled raw cauliflower cooking. That's how Diane looked. And she said to me, it's this, and she gestured to me up and down. She said, it's not working.
Wow.
Yeah, she said, you don't look modern, you look stuffy, you look unapproachable. She said, this has got to change. And I thought, what do I do? I mean, I've been wearing these suits and ties forever. Not looking like this, looking pretty stuffy. Well, maybe I do look stuffy like this.
You look great.
But I bought a black leather blazer and a black turtleneck, and I became an all-black person for a very long time.
Yeah. Well, obviously you've changed. You added a lot more color to the spectrum that we've seen.
I have.
Wow, and then the rest is history, I guess. You just got really involved in the fashion department there.
Yes, and I have to tell you too, Lauren.
Yeah.
I became so, I'll use the word obsessed with being a champion for American fashion, because most of what we hear about in this industry has to do with European brands, and I thought, I want to champion American fashion. And I love the fact, I celebrate the fact that we look at fashion in this nation through a lens of commerce. If it's not selling, who cares? I mean, it's not something you put in a vitrine in a museum. I mean, you may, but after it's had its success and it's earned iconography.
Sure. At the same time, in retail, we're seeing a lot of stores suffering. Stores like Banana Republic, J. Crew, stores that I grew up with. I mean,
mainstays.
Yeah. So why do you think that is, and what do you think is the future for retailers like that?
Well, I mean, we certainly know that online shopping has become very dominant, but also, and this is something that's so impossible to control, customers are fickle. I mean, one day they love you, the next day you were yesterday. I'm moving on. How do you navigate that? I mean, it's a huge conundrum. If we had the answer, we wouldn't be in this situation. So I'm fascinated by all this. I'm somewhat in dismay about it as well, but it's fascinating to see where it will potentially take us. Because the status quo won't do. And the other thing is, I mean, look at so many of the retailers. They're so afraid of change, other than the product itself. There's a sense of inertia there. And unless you're throwing the dice and taking big risks, wave bye-bye.
Yeah, you need to evolve
exactly
to sustain. At the same time, we're seeing a lot in eco-fashion and sustainability. Do you see a little bit more of that down the line as well?
Well, just from the ethical and moral aspect, I hope so. But in my experience in retail, I spent 7 years working with Liz Claiborne Inc. and their brands. The customer doesn't care. I mean, we need to educate the customer about why this is an important topic and why the customer should support it. But for the most part, the customer's pretty uninterested.
Sure. I understand you're working on a new book.
I am.
And it's about plus-size fashion.
Well, plus-size fashion is at the core of it.
Yeah.
I realized I needed, at least for my own sake, to have a story that has more depth and gives a context to where we are today and our perception of women in particular. So it's not to make it sound too grand, but it's the history of how societies and cultures historically have viewed about their perceptions of beauty and sexuality. Because it has evolved considerably.
Yeah.
And I'm not a fan of where we are today. It's just unrealistic.
Sure. Where do you think we need to be, or how do you think we need to change that?
Well, we need to be more inclusive, and that certainly goes back to the retailers. I mean, how can retailers who are interested in making money, how can they turn their back on 85 million women in this nation alone who are larger than a size 12? 85 million women. I mean, it's just impossible to even wrap your brain around such a ridiculous issue.
Yeah.
And then those retailers who do address women larger than a size 12 decide to put them in a completely different department from the rest of the real clothes, as they call them. It's infantilizing, it's demoralizing, and quite frankly, I think it's disgraceful, and it needs to change.
Well, it's nice. When do you expect this book to come out?
Oh boy, you sound like my.
I'm your publisher.
I was just going to say, Lauren, are you working with my publisher?
Yes. I'm like, come on, right.
I mean, ideally, this time next year.
Okay.
Ideally.
All right. I know you have so much going on, obviously.
I'm very lucky.
Yeah. That's the thing. You spent how many, 25 years or so of your life, more behind the scenes, and then you get
29 total.
29, right? And then you get a phone call to be on Project Runway, and I understand.
I said no.
You said no, right? And what made you change your mind?
I met with the producers,
Yeah.
And also at the time they were looking for a consultant. My role on the show didn't exist. I was intrigued. When we spoke on the phone, I thought, oh God, it's going to be one of those shows where they're picking people at random off the street and saying, we're going to make you into a fashion designer. I thought this is never going to work. But when I met with them and realized that they wanted to work with real fashion designers and also that they were the producers of Project Greenlight about filmmaking, I thought, okay, they have a seriousness, they have integrity, and I'm interested. But then I didn't hear from them for months, and it just left my head, and I thought, well, they found someone else, and they moved on. And then they called.
And your life has changed quite.
Oh, my goodness.
Mean, you went from not many people knowing you to everyone knowing you.
Well, you're
not
kind.
Everyone. Well, to being a well-known figure.
Well, and I never dreamed that. Well, first of all, I never dreamed that I would even be on camera. That happened at the very last minute. The producers, I think, were afraid that the designers would go into the workroom and no one would talk. I mean, I wouldn't. I'd be working, get this design done. But by sending me in to probe and ask questions, they were assured of some dialogue. But I was also very cognizant of the position of the cameras in the workroom, and I thought, as long as they have the producers, or as long as they have the designers responding to me, no one needs to see me, no one needs to hear my voice. And I never dreamed there'd be a season 2, so who knew?
Yeah, 16 seasons, and what has been your favorite so far, and which I know you have a least favorite as well?
A least favorite season? Oh, indeed I do.
Yes.
My favorite season, to be honest, I mean, I've always loved the season that we're in, but upon reflection, it's probably season 13, because the design work was so incredibly strong, and there was very little drama. And I have to say, speaking for me and for the producers, we don't like the drama because the designers don't do their best work. So we do everything we can to extinguish that drama. People think, oh, you build this up so that there will be all this conflict. Well, some shows do, but we don't.
Yeah.
Things just happen, and of course, these are creative people. So by nature, they're a little souped up.
Sure. So your least favorite?
Season 8.
Okay, so that was quite a few years ago.
It was quite a few,
Yeah.
but it's still potent in
burns?
my memory. Yes, talk about ridiculous drama and a ridiculous winner, and yeah.
And the relationship with the judges, how do you feel like where that's at right now?
The relationship with
With
whom?
the judges on the show.
With whom? I have to tell you, I began to discipline myself very early on in the seasons because they want lots of information, and I have a lot of information, and I don't want to give it to them. I don't want them to be any way biased by it. And it's why I'm not a judge, because I have so much information, and I know what's going on in the workroom, and I know what challenges each individual designer faced, or perhaps it's the opposite, and they just breezed into this and did fantastic work. So I do as little as possible to interact with the judges, to be honest. I mean, they're lovely people,
Sure.
but we don't mingle.
What is something that, as a viewer, we don't see, but that you know from being behind the scenes, whether it's with the designers or your role?
Well, but I don't believe many people entirely grasp or believe, because many of the designers, when they arrive for their season, are completely disarmed by this. Our timeline is real.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Absolutely
It's scary for
real.
the designer,
Well,
yeah.
and when we have a one-day challenge, and most of the challenges are one day, it's 10 hours. 10 hours to conceive, to shop, to drape and draft, to construct, to style, to fit, all of that. It's 10 hours.
Yeah, that's a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
That is.
I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
And when the judges are harshly critical, I say to them, you try it. Oh, you found a pin in the hem? Well, guess what? 10 hours.
This is reality.
Yeah.
What would you say your favorite part of being a mentor is on the show?
Well, it's what kept me in the classroom for 29 years. It's having the privilege of being in attendance when this individual has an epiphany about what they can achieve. Because it has to come from them. I can probe, I can be a kind of catalyst, but it has to come from them. And when it does, and it's something that is life-changing for that individual, it's just a huge joy and a privilege to bear witness to it.
How often are you keeping up with where the designers go after they leave the show?
Well, I try as well as I can, and I keep up. Well, I keep up with them whether we're in touch or not. But I'm in touch with them as much as they want to be in touch with me. I don't want to be haranguing them. And we have about 180 alumni so far. I mean, it's a lot.
That's a lot of people.
It's a lot.
Okay, so for someone who's looking to add something, switching gears a little bit to their closet, his or her closet, and they only have a certain amount, a certain amount of money, what's one item that you think we should spend money on to add to our closets?
I'm a budget shopper. I may not be the right. Well, outerwear.
Yeah.
Quite frankly.
Okay.
Is probably the best.
Yeah, like a nice coat.
Yeah.
Or, yeah.
And
okay.
I'm not a trend person, other than knowing what trends are happening, and working with the command has really kept me up with trends, the florals, the metallics and glitter, bold stripes, for instance, and lots of texture. But I don't preach to people about items that they should buy. I mean, other than something broad like outerwear.
Yeah,
It depends upon who you are and how you want to present yourself and what resonates for you.
But you do have a feeling about something like cropped pants, for example.
Oh, don't, please. And it goes back to what we were saying earlier about silhouette, proportion, and fit.
Yep.
It's the proportion aspect. It makes an individual look shorter and squatter.
Yeah.
And everyone I know, regardless of gender, they want to look as long and lean as possible.
Definitely.
And our clothes can provide us with a kind of optical illusion. And with crop pants, you're doing yourself no service. But I know what it is, because I've spent a lot of time asking women about this, women who love them. It's the fact that you only have to fit one aspect of yourself, your waist.
Huh.
As opposed to, well, how long is it? What shoe do I wear with it? There's so many related issues that a crop pant extinguishes.
It's just easy for women, for some people. Yeah.
But easy usually isn't good.
Yeah. What are some major faux pas? I know you're against leggings as pants.
Ugh. When did it happen? When did suddenly...
I feel like it's everywhere, though.
It is everywhere, but why? I mean, it's a form of undergarments. And suddenly there it is for all to see. It's way too much information. It just is. And I have no objection to leggings. Wear them with a tunic.
Yep.
You can wear them with a pair of shorts. They can look chic.
Yeah.
But don't wear them as a pant. But I have a theory, and I call it the monkey house at the zoo. The first time you walk into the monkey house, you shriek, "This place stinks." And after 20 minutes, you think, doesn't smell so bad. And after 40 minutes, you think, what smell? Don't you think this was the case with leggings?
I think it has been.
You
It still
walk
is.
by the mirror and you think, I can't go out like this. And then you walk by 20 minutes later and you think, it's not so bad.
You just get accustomed to it.
Yeah, and then you walk by the mirror and you say, I look hot. Well, it's not good.
Oh,
And bare midriffs are also on my list.
I see a lot of those.
Yes, including in the winter.
Yes, yes, it's keeping them cool, I guess.
Too much information.
TMI, exactly. When you're not doing fashion and design, you are fencing, which a lot of people may not know. You've been training with a fencing Olympian.
Yeah, who I actually met here at AOL Build.
Yes, the last time you were with us.
AOL Build changed my life.
Amazing. I hope
Yeah.
we're changing your life today, too.
You are.
Okay.
But I met Tim Morehouse here. He was interviewing me, and he's a 3-time Olympian and a silver medalist. He just opened a fencing club, and I thought, oh, it's a place where you go have drinks and watch fencing videos. No, it's an education. It's an education center. And I visited him and asked him whether I could be his oldest student, and I am.
Amazing. What does it bring you that you enjoy?
Exhilaration.
Okay.
And also, you have to be in the moment. You can't be anywhere else. It's a workout for the body. It's a workout for the brain, and it's just the most. I mean, I have to tell you too, Lauren. I'm not a jock. I mean, I kind of feel like one now, but I didn't do. After high school, I didn't participate in any sports. I've never belonged to a gym.
Yeah.
And suddenly, this was 2.5 years ago, at age 62, I'm taking up fencing. I mean, it's been just phenomenal. Phenomenal.
I love it. All right. Well, we have some questions from the audience, so stay tuned.
Great.
Who's up first?
Hi.
So out of all the contestants that have been on Project Runway, are there any that you still follow to see what they're coming up with?
Oh, of course. In fact, there are many, many, many. As recently as this morning, Christian Siriano, who's opening up bricks and mortar pop-up shop. Yeah, very excited about that.
Very cool. Thanks. Who's next?
Don't be afraid.
Hi, Tim.
Hi.
So we already covered what's your one piece to update in your closet. What's that one piece of interior design you like to really start and make sure it gets updated routinely?
Oh, I feel that I should answer the same way I would if you were to ask me about clothes. I mean, there are items that we all need, like a bed. If you have built-in shelves, you may not even need a dresser. And depending upon your proclivities, you may not even want any upholstered furniture. I know lots of architects who don't live with any upholstery, and it's painful to visit them. I like something on the wall, and I would find, and there are plenty of things that are affordable. I even said earlier, posters, which can be very inexpensively framed, just to give them a little more of a polish. And of course, command strips. You can use them to position things and to play with a wall, but it just brings height to a room. As I said, it's affordable, it's achievable, and it's relatable.
Awesome. All right, who's next?
Everyone's fearful.
Hi.
Don't be scared.
This is going to be an online question.
Yes.
Amanda would like to know, are there any trends that you see returning from the past, and are there any that shouldn't?
Any trends that should just go away?
Yeah.
Well, I like where trends are right now. As I mentioned, the florals and the bold stripes and glitter and glamour and sparkle and texture. But those are staples as far as I'm concerned. I'm glad that they're back in everyone's vocabulary now, in fashion and in interiors. But they're not going to go away, and it's not a trend that you won't want to continue to embrace. The neons, I think, are very difficult, and they go in and out of trend. I would avoid them at all costs. They're just distracting. I think it's just entirely too much color. There really is such a thing. That's top on my list. No neon.
Got it. Check mark on that. All right. Well, thank you for those questions. And Tim, thank you so much for coming by today.
Thank you,
What
Lauren.
a great day. All right. Tim Gunn, everyone.
Thank you very much.